Between Games, supporting community sport. Proudly brought to you by GippSport.
Hello and welcome to the next instalment of Between Games. Finally, GippSport's put together the A team, and I'm very proud to be with my colleague here, Amelia Everson. Welcome, Amelia.
Well, I'm glad to be part of the A team. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today on the Between Games. I'm looking forward to today's episode, but don't forget to like, comment, and share our podcast on your social media.
Yeah, perfect. We want people to be listening, especially to the A team. So today we'll be chatting to a Collingwood Football Club Premiership captain coach, which we're both very excited about. Great team, obviously, Collingwood. So Brenton has a wealth of knowledge, particularly on the topic that we're talking about today, which is inclusive sport, particularly for people with a disability. And we've worked with Brenton in the past, and very engaging, getting some really good messages across around why it is important to have inclusive sport, particularly in Gippsland. So Amelia, what are you looking forward to hearing about today from Brenton?
As you just mentioned, we've been really fortunate enough to work with Brenton on multiple occasions across different Gippsland programs, and he's definitely one funny guy and always happy to share his story with others. But I'm really looking forward to chatting about why inclusive sport is so important.
Yeah, so just as a bit of background, GippSport receives funding through Sport and Recreation Victoria, works on a program called Access for All Abilities, or for short, the AAA program. And the aim is to provide people with disabilities the opportunity to participate in inclusive sport and recreation. For our instance, it's Gippsland, but there's other regional sports assemblies across the state of Victoria that also provide the same opportunities. I've been involved in the program for over 9 years now, and it's just amazing the support that we've had from Gippsland clubs, associations and facilities to provide those opportunities for people with disability. Some, I guess, highlights, or it's hard to say highlights because there are so many, but I work with a group mainly based in the Sale, Maffra, Latrobe Valley region, and they're a social group of people with low vision or people that are blind, and they were just catching up for coffee, created their own group called Six Pack, or VIPAC, and they contacted me and said, Brenton, we want to engage in some sport. So in that time, they've done golf, sailing, kayaking, swish table tennis, which is modified table tennis specifically for people with low vision. But every time they get together, it's just smiles, happiness, laughs, hanging a bit of crap on each other at some points. But the whole idea around is fun and in an inclusive and supportive environment. And I think that's what all the AAA program is about. And I guess it's just only some small modifications that can make all the difference in including people with disability. It's not, we have to change everything, change the world. There are just some small things. And by actually talking to the person who's interested in participating in the sport, we can learn a lot and learn how to make our sport more inclusive. Other examples include the Sail to Sea Disability Kayak Challenge, which has been running for over 11 years now. There's multiple gymnastics clubs, netball associations that run inclusive sports for people with disability in Gippsland. The Wellington Hockey Club have been going for years. Like I said, the list can go on. So are there any, I guess, highlights for you, Amelia? You've been with GippSport for over a couple of years now. Any highlights that shine through of the AAA program?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, they've just reeled off a heap of programs, so I'm not sure how I could possibly name one, but we are pretty lucky to be able to support many programs across the region. And one highlight that comes to mind would be a soccer gala day that I was involved in last year in 2019, and that was for specialist schools. So it was hosted by the Drill and Dragons Soccer Club. And the highlight was where the Warragul Specialist School students were given a Drill and Dragon soccer uniform to play in. And they just had the pure joy on their faces and running out in the field, and they were chanting the theme song. It was just something else, and the feeling that they had of inclusion and that they'd always been a part of the club, it was just really special to see.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's the main thing too, isn't it, Amelia? They felt a part of the club,
yeah,
which
definitely.
is what we all strive for.
Yep.
Well, it's time to introduce our guest. And for today from the Collingwood Football Club, we have Brenton Stroud. Welcome, Brenton.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
We're awesome. Thanks,
Good,
mate.
Thank you.
Very good to see the Collingwood attire in your house, and good to talk to a Collingwood player as a very proud and passionate Collingwood supporter. So
yeah,
great to have you on
Collingwood. Great to be here. Great to be here, mate. Always love talking to you.
No, we really appreciate your time, and it'd be good to get an insight into some of the work you're doing at Collingwood Football Club. I've known your story for quite a while now. We've been able to partner for some really good activities in the Gippsland area. So I thought we just start off with a bit of a conversation around your role at Collingwood and how they've engaged you in their club.
Oh, Collingwood's been fantastic. I've been there. It's probably my second year. I've been working with Collingwood as an inclusive officer. So obviously the disability side of it and making sure the team's running properly and promoting disabilities within sport and going out to, as I did with Latrobe late last year, and just promoting the sport, promoting the inclusion stuff with the Collingwood. So it's really good. They've been like a family to join into. So it's a fantastic club to get them on board and doing stuff. So all the other clubs are doing the same thing, but Collingwood's probably more at the forefront of being more inclusive of all the sports that we run at Collingwood. We've got 7 teams at Collingwood. Besides the wheelchair football, we obviously got the men's AFL and the women's and the netball and the cricket. Actually, no, they don't do the cricket anymore, but there's 7 teams through Collingwood. So it's not just a football club anymore. It's a sporting club. So I've actually got most of the people, the men's and the women's, into doing wheelchair football as well. So they know what the sport feels like. It's been fantastic and they love it. They don't pull many hamstrings, which is good. So we'll leave that to us guys. So it's really fun. We've actually started I got going, I call it Blood on the Bridge, because we actually do games against the Richmond staff now. So when Collingwood and Richmond are playing, we actually have the staff playing at Collingwood, so for a cup as well. So last year we started up that, and I call it Blood on the Bridge because obviously there's a bridge there. So yeah, it's pretty good. And Collingwood beat Richmond by about 30 or 40 points in the staff game. So that was pretty awesome to see as well. So yeah, it was pretty good. So, but the staff love it as well. And we had, through Disability Sport and Recreation, as you know, I do work with as well. We have the Disability Festival down at South Bank, and we had some Collingwood players down there, and Collingwood came away with the chockies through that game as well, through the staff playing as well. So it's great to see everybody, able-bodies and people with disabilities, jumping into the sport and promoting it through Collingwood. So it's been fantastic. So, and Cole's obviously sponsoring us through it as well. So it's been great to have those guys on board as well. So, yeah.
And you've just touched on the wheelchair AFL, Brenton. It's a exciting sport. It's very hard to play, having being someone that's jumped in the chair and tried to play it. Yeah, I think it is. You make it look very easy, but obviously you've had some involvement from the start of the wheelchair AFL competition as a captain and coach of the Collingwood Football Club. Can you just give a bit of an insight into perhaps some of the rules that modify the game, some certain aspects, and probably, I'm presuming your proudest moment is holding up the Premiership Cup. So I'm sure you'd like to talk about that as well.
Yeah, it's just I've actually got a photo of it on my wall. I'll just rip it out and bring it in. But it's a fantastic game. Well, it started in Victoria probably about 7 years ago now, 6-7 years ago. So it actually started off as a national carnival before the AFL came on board. So it went the other way around like we usually do. So Tasmania, South Australia, 2 Defence Force teams and an RSL team were holding the nationals in Victoria. And we got asked if we wanted to put a team in, and we've gone, why the hell not? Victoria's the home of football. So I was rolling around at DSR and they asked me, do I want to look at this? Do I want to look at coaching a team for the nationals? And I looked at it on a piece of paper and I thought, what the hell is this thing? Look, it's an upside down IKEA catalogue thing. I've got no idea what the hell it was. It just doesn't read well on paper when you first see it. So I thought, yeah, I'll give it a bash. Having coached through basketball and stuff and things before, so I'll give it a bash. So I've got some really good basketball players who have really good chair skills and stuff, and obviously just had to transfer into that. So we started off with 8 players in Victoria. We came away with a silver medal against South Australia then. So for the 7 weeks that we trained, we did really well to come away with the silver medal. It's fantastic. So those 8 players, we then started growing. The next year, I think we had about 20 to 30 people wanting to try out. And we talked about the AFL coming in, and obviously the AFL did come in. So about 3 years ago, so Collingwood was the first team to come in. Then Richmond, Hawthorn, Essendon, and St Kilda followed with that. So now we've got 5 full AFL teams that we play, and we're totally affiliated with. You pull on the jumpers. We're playing for Collingwood, Hawthorn, Essendon, Richmond, St Kilda. So for even if you're not one of those supporters, to pull on an AFL jumper and play is fantastic as well. So the first season started in 2018 in the AFL. So, well, I had a really dominant team. I picked really well. I knew what I was drafting for, and probably the other guys were quite new and didn't really know the experience they needed and stuff. So I picked, obviously myself, I picked another Australian basketball player. I picked the wheelchair coach of the Paralympian team back in Barcelona, who I'd known for years as well. So he's got good chair skills, good hand-eye skills. And Richard Amon, who is just a gun forward as well, so who's an able-bodied. But that set us through the season for a really strong core. So we went through the season undefeated. We had one big scare against St Kilda. We had a draw with those guys. So, but to go through the season undefeated was fantastic, and hold that massive 2018 Premiership Cup up. Have Eddie Maguire there and the CEOs from some of the clubs and stuff. We had around 400 plus people at Boroondara Sports Complex, and the Robert Rose Foundation, and that has been fantastic. Just been sport and recreation. AFL Vic's been fantastic for that sort of thing. So, so it's grown from there. So we've gone from 8 players to 50 players playing, plus another 20 to 30 people who have interest. So, and people always ask, how do we play the game? Do you play on grass? Obviously, no, we don't get too far. So, and we don't take speckies. That's sad. I better not say. Do we still kick better in some forwards that we know? We won't mention names though. Yeah. Anyway, so a hand pass replaces a kick. All right, and an underarm throw below shoulder height replaces a hand pass. So by hand pass it to you, you got your time. You go back from the mark, obviously, and scope out. You got a few seconds to get rid of it. But if someone underarm throws it to you and you got it, it's like a hand pass. So you've got prior opportunity. You got a couple of seconds to get rid of it. If you go off the spot, that's when somebody just touches you, and it's holding the ball. So we don't tackle people. Like people falling over in wheelchairs all the time. It's too time consuming to get people up and stuff like that. So we play on like a netball style court. So we have 3 zones like netball. So we have forward, centre, back zone. Now we have 5 players from each team on the court. 2 forwards, 2 backs, and a centre. The centre can go in all zones. The backs can't go into the forward zone, and the forwards can't go in the back zone. Only the forwards can score. And now the first year, only the forwards can score from the forward zone forwards. But last year, we've made it from the last third. The forwards can score from the last third onwards. So if you're a decent enough hand pass and get it through, it's a goal, obviously. So a hand pass through for the big sticks is 6 points. Obviously, if you miss, it's a point. Comes off to another player, could be a rush behind and stuff like that. So it's an awesome sport. We have stacks of crashes. Have you ever seen wheelchair basketball? It's a lot more physical than that because we actually are allowed to crash, but you got to obviously look like you're not going for the man, so to speak. And it's great to have women inclusive in it as well because we only have about 8 women. We want more playing, obviously, so we wanted an inclusive sport for everybody. So having women playing, having able-bodies playing, obviously people with varying disabilities are playing as well. So it's an all-inclusive sport for everybody at every level. So even though we have the AFL level of it, we also have a social level as well. So people who maybe not getting enough time on the court can play in the social games beforehand, and also people who aren't in the main teams can also play in the social games. So it's giving everyone a go as well. And we all play on the same day, on a Sunday. So it's like a big family. People can talk to you and talk about problems and stuff like that. So it started off as I said, about 8 players. Now it's turned into this family that everybody can go out and have cups of coffee with them because there's a cafe there and talk about things, and all we've got each other's back. And it's really great for that social mental side of it as well. So it's been fantastic to watch it grow like that.
That's great. I've got a question. How did you become involved in accessible sports? So I know you've played a few other sports. You've mentioned footy and basketball briefly. Is there any other sports that you've played, and how did you get involved?
How I got involved is car accident. I had a car accident when I was 22, fell asleep driving and all sorts of stuff. So obviously having a disability then and being very sports-minded before my accident, but football, cricket, taekwondo and all sorts of stuff. Sport was in my blood, so to speak. So having to find something like that was probably crucial for my mental health. I'm not a person who can sit home and read a book. I don't get no adrenaline from that unless somebody's throwing books at me and I'm dodging them. So there's no adrenaline for that for me. So sport I needed for myself. So through Disability Sport and Recreation back then, after they were having a netball clinic at the Austin Hospital, and I thought, oh, okay, I'll give that a bash, and just wondering if I had to wear a skirt or anything like that. So I shaved my legs pre-game and realised I didn't have to wear a skirt, so I shaved for nothing. But anyway, but I found it's a sport. So I got into it quite easily, and I used to travel from Maffra down to Royal Park to play. So as you know, it's a long haul to catch a train from Sale to the Royal Park area. But I love the game, so it gave me that mental stimulation that I needed instead of sitting home and dwelling on my accident and feeling sorry for myself. It gave me a purpose to breathe, basically. So I played wheelchair netball for a few years, played at the state level, and then I found there was basketball outside. So I went to wheelchair basketball and got into the Victorian team virtually in the first month. And Mark Walker, who's the first Paralympian coach who got us a gold medal through Barcelona, he was my coach then. And, played quite a few regional games, state games, and didn't get into the Australian team to quite some time later. I was probably one of the oldest rookies to get into the Australian wheelchair basketball team. Wheelchair tennis I've played as well, played quite a few Australian Opens and things, won a few Australian Opens on different levels, so that's been fantastic. Wheelchair Taekwondo as well, I did that. So finding different sports to suit what I've done beforehand in doing stuff, trying anything basically, and to show other people also that there's these other sports that we can try at different levels. And being an inclusive officer at Collingwood, or working with DSR, or just talking to people saying, hey, there's this sport you can try, or try this one, really depends on what you want to do. Instead of sitting home playing Xbox, only pumps up these little guns. Want to get some of these, got to get out and do a little bit more. You know that feeling, don't you, Brenton?
Yeah, absolutely. You've told me that many times.
Yeah. So it's the sports that I've tried, obviously I've loved, and I've excelled in some of them. And wheelchair footy is probably my main thing now. Sure, I played and got gold medals through Australia, basketball and all sorts of stuff, but to hold a premiership cup in the colours that I love, Collingwood, and passionate about, it's just fantastic. I won, and going to Copeland Trophy, Collingwood's best and fairest last year, and getting my best and fairest for the Collingwood team up on the stage, getting presented by Robert Rose and having Eddie and Bucks and everybody in the crowd and stuff, is just something that comes along once a lifetime, I guess. And for a person with a disability, not being able to do obviously able-bodied football and stuff, to pull your jumper on and represent the club that you love, it's been fantastic. And they're a really great welcoming club, Collingwood. So it's great to see all clubs are doing that as well now.
Definitely put on the right jumper, I think. And that it is a very big premiership cup too.
It's a pretty big jumper too. So, yeah.
What number is it?
22. So 22, it is still side bottoms, but there's a story behind this. All the captains now wear 22.
Okay.
Because the Robert Rose Foundation, Robert Rose was ended up a quadriplegic, played for Collingwood, played for the Bulldogs. He had a car accident when he was 22, became a quadriplegic, and through the Robert Rose Foundation, they became Team 22 to Power 2, so mental health and all sorts of stuff. So Team 22 is there, and Robert Rose Foundation is to help people with spinal cord injuries for a better life, mental health, or they need equipment or grants and things like that. It certainly helped me. They helped me get the van that I've got now through TAC. I'm lucky I'm covered through TAC through some things, but some things I've got to pay myself. So through the Robert Rose Foundation and Collingwood, they've helped me get the van that I've now got since I've had cancer, which is another story. Sadly, I got diagnosed with cancer this year, so rare form of cancer, and a 13-hour plus operation. And you look at your circulating body of blood, it's about 5.5 litres. I had to have all that replaced and more during the operation and after the operation, and I didn't get all the cancer, sadly, so I've got to have chemo and radiotherapy sometime next month at the start. I've got a couple of more tests to find out how much cancer is left, sadly. So my season, if I have a football season this year, I don't know yet. It really depends how I feel with the treatment I've got to go with. So I'm a co-captain of Collingwood this year. I've made myself co-captain. I've made Brett Newman, who was my vice-captain last year, co-captain, to have him step up if I'm not there. And I've made Brian Fitzpatrick the coach. So it takes away a lot of the stuff that I've been doing as a team manager, doing everything. So if I do get back to playing this year or next year, I can just concentrate on playing and go out my way instead of a sickness trying to take me out. So, which is the main thing. So, but everyone's been really supportive in that. So, and if you are thinking about giving blood, please donate, because it certainly helps people like myself.
That's great. And why do you think it's so important for people with a disability to get involved in sport?
Certainly the social network of just being around people certainly helps the mental side of it, because you look at people who have mental health problems with disabilities. It's around 48 to 50% of people with disabilities have a mental health problem. So getting out and doing something is imperative. So be it sport or going up to the library or shopping centre, is getting out and doing something with a friend, the power of 22. Do it with somebody or do it with a group. So sport has been a very inclusive part to a lot of people, and it certainly helps their mental side of it. And we often hear sport has saved my life. It's definitely saved my life quite a few times. So getting out of the house, going to meet your mates or play against your mates, and it gives you that adrenaline, that excitement, that want, that need, that purpose in life, the reason to breathe. And that's what we all need, regardless if you're able-bodied or disability. We need a purpose in our life to breathe properly, to go and say, oh, I'm excited to do this. And with this virus thing going around now, everyone's going crazy. When's my gym going to go open? When's the gym? When's the bar going to open? I don't know which one to go to, the gym or the bar. Hey, I'll just exercise. So,
do a bit of both.
Do a bit of both. So anyway, I very rarely drink, so it's I fall out of my chair. It's not a good thing. So. But the mental side of it is imperative to get out for people to do something. Yeah, sure, staying at home and worrying about stuff is really not good for our health. Talking to people, be it somebody you're playing sport with, talking to friends, family, talk to doctors, find somebody to talk to, because mental health is a huge, huge problem. And it's probably a bigger problem now with everybody being enclosed indoors. There's a lot of things going on. So as soon as everybody's able to go out and do stuff, is certainly jump into a sport, try a new sport, go up to do something recreational, go for a walk, go for a push, find something that makes you tick instead of sitting at home.
That's really important that you just mentioned that, Brendan, because probably leads into my next question around barriers to participation for people with disability. And as an able-bodied person, sometimes you don't think of any barriers because you can just drive, or you can walk to your local footy club, you play footy on a Saturday, you train on a Tuesday, Thursday night, but there are potentially some extra barriers for people with disability to get involved. And obviously the COVID-19 pandemic 6 months ago, you wouldn't have even thought that the world would be the way it is at the moment. So a lot of people have barriers because we can't actually be involved in our sports clubs, or we're just getting back into it. But for yourself as an example, what barriers have you come across over your lifetime that have probably, I guess, you've had to power through those barriers to actually get involved in sport?
Oh, the first probably hurdle I got stuck with when I was looking for employment after I had my accident, because I was a photographer before my accident, and I applied for a job as working in a photography shop, and the first thing they said to me, oh, how are you going to reach this? How are you going to do that? And I've gone, well, how are you going to take photos of that? And I've gone, oh, okay. So I've just been pushed back. So that was a quite bit of a negative to me, and obviously made me rethink what I needed to do in my life. So even from that moment, it was a good and bad thing. You're looking 30 plus years ago. Obviously, life's changed now for a lot of people, how they talk about things and look at things. But it sort of gave me a push to do something else in my life. So I started forgetting about photography and jumped into doing computers and working with other people and that sort of stuff. Worked for NAB. And they actually probably were the best company that actually got me into doing something. So they brought me in as a temp. I was doing filing, and one of the team leaders there, who had a slight disability anyway, David Steen, I think his name is, he said, oh, do you want to jump on the computers? And I said, yeah, that looks good. Got to look at something. So got into that, and that stemmed from there. That changed my whole mindset of looking for work, what type of work I was going to do. So that one problem I've been given by how am I going to reach this, how am I going to do that, certainly made me look forward to, okay, I've got to think outside the square, or I've got to change something for my thing. So, but I still kept my independence, and I still probably do too much without not asking. If you see my place at Christmas time, you think, how the hell does he do all that? Because I do all the guttering for the neighbours and stuff as well. I've got this big hook thing. I put it up, and I struggle with it sometimes, but it's a labour I love to get to. So the barriers we put in front of ourselves as well, because if it's too hard or we don't know how to think past, okay, I need to try this or try that, sometimes those barriers we put there by ourselves. Yeah, sure, there's steps, there's doors that we can't get through, there's maybe ramps that we can't get through, there's not enough disabled toilets where we are. And even with this COVID thing, how are we going to start wheelchair football? Because if you're having people coming in and different carers, if you've got carers or any sport like that, you've got carers, and they're chopping and changing and stuff, you really got to be worried about how the viruses, or any virus, be it cold or flu or the COVID, how it's going to travel. So even like a wheelchair talk program where we've got chairs that we would have to disinfect after each talk, so the next group of kids. So there's all those things we got to really think of. So when I go out to places that I've never been through, I'll actually Google or ring them up and say, hey, is it wheelchair accessible? But you ring a person up and say, hey, is your place wheelchair friendly? And they say, oh, yeah. But you get there and you can't get in. So you're better off doing a lot more research. Go there if you can beforehand and find another way to get around. So there's always going to be barriers. There's always going to be steps, but we've got to be able to think past those. Not everything is accessible, sadly. So it costs trillions of dollars to make every single building wheelchair accessible. Sometimes we've got to think, okay, we can't do that. So there's got to be another way we can do things. Go meet at a shop, go meet somewhere else if you need to. So yeah, we do put our own personal barriers up a lot too. So.
Well, Brenton, I know you can talk for about 3 or 4 hours quite comfortably, and sometimes underwater. But I just want to thank you for your time for our Between Games podcast. There's some very powerful messages that you've touched on, a lot of things there, and we wish you all the best over the coming months. You've got some more challenges, but you've powered through them your whole life, so I can't see there'll be any reason why you can't get through these ones. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your messaging. And we really look forward to working with you in the future, because some of the work you've done with our local schools, our local programs and activities, it's getting some really good messages out, particularly to youth, around why it's important to include people with disability in not only our sport, but our everyday life. So, and making, breaking down those barriers that you were talking about to make it easier for everyone. So thank you once again.
And just for those who are on TikTok, see you on the For You page. Yeah.
I thought you added a sneaky TikTok move in there. I saw it.
Oh, God. Well, thanks for that, Brenton. And as we always say,
nice seeing you again, guys.
Go Pies.
Pies.
Hey.
So, Amelia, we're coming to the end of the podcast, and how great it was to be able to have that time to chat to Brenton. There were some powerful messages in there, obviously, around inclusive sport. Is there something that caught your attention?
Yeah, well, there was definitely some important messages that Brenton spoke about. I guess that something that really stuck with me was the percentage of people with a disability that also have some mental health problems. And it goes to show that sport really does play a crucial role in people's lives. And as Brenton mentioned, it gives people a purpose in life. Was there any key messages that you took out of the chat?
Yeah, very similar to what you've just mentioned. Brendan certainly mentioned how sport has probably personally saved his life a few times. And as he said, it gives him reason to breathe, reason to get up in the morning and feel like he's achieving something. He's obviously achieved a lot throughout his career as a professional athlete now. But I guess just shows how important the work we do locally and also at an elite level is for people with a disability, to give them, like Brendan said, that reason to breathe. So, Amelia, that's a wrap for today's podcast. We would like to thank Brendan and obviously the Collingwood Football Club for their participation, and obviously Brendan's lengthy chat with us, which was fantastic to hear. Inclusive sport is so important for all of our communities, and everybody has the right to equitable participation, whether you have a disability or you're not, whether you're a male or whether you're a female. It's important that we continue to do the work to make sure that everyone is included in our local sporting programs. In a couple of podcasts' time, we're going to be chatting to Yvonne Snell from Special Olympics Australia, and really looking forward to having a chat to her about the work we're partnering up with, which started late last year. So look forward to our next inclusive podcast chat.
For more information on Between Games, visit www.gippsport.com.au. Between Games is supported by Vic Health and the Department of Health and Human Services. GippSport, supporting community sport.